Hi everyone, and welcome to my mid-December wrap-up. This is Rebecca for Rapacious Reads. Okay, so this month I read 7 books, and I'm halfway through my 8th, and it's December 15th, so I'm gonna do a mid-month one. Otherwise, I'd have a billion things to tell you. Okay, so the first book I read was A Betting Proposal by Tracey and Warren, and I really enjoyed it. It's about a widow and it's a romance novel, which isn't my usual thing. I tend to go for, virginal lasses. But this one had, because she was older, it had this emotional depth in both characters. And I actually gave it 5 stars. It was really good. The next book I read was Information Literacy Instruction, Theory and Practice by Grassian and Kaplowitz, and this book was shit. I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it to librarians. I wouldn't recommend it to teachers. I would not recommend it on a train. I would not recommend it on a plane. Basically, you can get this information from articles, and the information comes off as really outdated, so no, don't read it. Then I read The Good Soldier by Ford Madox Ford, and you already know about that because of my review video, so I'll link that down below. And then I was watching Climb the Stacks' video about Kurt Vonnegut, and I was like, yeah, I'm in the mood for some Vonnegut. So I read a piece of flash fiction by him, Harrison Bergeron, which is a view of a society where everyone is equal. And they're equal because those who are gifted or athletic or superior to anyone in any way are handicapped. So that everyone is perfectly average. And so it's 9 pages, and I recommend checking it out. And then I still had an itch for Vonnegut. So I also read Mother Night. And this is one of his pieces that is not absurdist. And in the preface, he talks about his experience with the bombing of Dresden, and it brought me to tears. So this book is a Nazi propagandist's perspective on World War II, and it's him reflecting on his actions during the war from awaiting trial in Israel. And he's actually American by birth, which is kind of interesting for a Nazi. Okay, so this month was exams for grad school. So I had an exam for web design, and I realized that the readings were included on the exam. So about 2 hours before the exam, I read Don't Make Me Think by Stephen Krug, which is a web design book. And it was kind of meh. In terms of usability books, I prefer Bill Buxton's book, Sketching User Experiences, the Workbook. And in terms of web design, I honestly prefer Information Architecture by Rosenfeld, Morville, and Arango. It just has more depth and more interest to me as somebody who is an information professional rather than a designer. And the last book that I've finished is The Duke in My Bed by Amelia Gray. And this book sucks. Don't read it. So basically it was just one of those ones where lust was provocated at the slightest twitch, and there was this conversation going on between the male and female in the book, and he just kept getting these erections, and he kept calling them sudden erections, and it was a fascinating and novel experience in the male anatomy. Okay, and then my boyfriend lent me his e-reader. Karsten lent me his e-reader to read the final book that I'm reading right now, which is The Legion of Flame by Anthony Ryan. It's the 2nd book in the Draconis Memoria series. And this fantasy series is more of a political kind of fantasy series. There's kind of the world is run by a corporate holdings empire. So it's kind of like the East India Trading Company. And there's also revolutionaries who kind of hold Marxist theory. So it's interesting to see that play in the world. And especially from like a very liberal perspective, seeing the downside of socialism and communism in the corporate world, very interesting. So that has been my reading wrap up, and we'll see you next week.